to get back to the very controversial case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador by the Trump administration. I want to bring in Abrego Garcia's attorney, Benjamin Osorio. Benjamin, thanks once again for joining us. 4 more Democratic members of Congress are visiting El Salvador today. Do you think that's going to be helpful?
I do think it's helpful. The more and more public pressure there is for the Trump administration to follow the Supreme Court's ruling in this case. So the more courts, the more public attention, the more that Congress is willing to stand up to the executive. I do think it's helpful because they cannot continue to flout the Supreme Court's order here.
What's it going to take, you think, to finally get Abrego Garcia reunited with his family in Maryland? His wife is a U.S. citizen.
I think through the depositions that are taking place, I think through the interrogatories and the documents that we receive, I think we'll be able to find, hopefully, evidence of this agreement that we clearly have with El Salvador to house these individuals. So I think once we have that information in our hands, we will be able to have another court order forcing them to comply with the Supreme Court's order to facilitate Mr. Abrego's return.
President Trump and his associates keep insisting that Abrego Garcia is a terrorist, that he's a member of a gang in El Salvador. What's your reaction to that?
My reaction is the same that the Fourth Circuit had. If you're so confident in your assertions that he's a gang member, then there is a way for you to prove it. There's a way for you to take away his withholding. They would be well within their rights to reopen his immigration case and relitigate that protection before sending him to El Salvador. There's due process that's demanded here, and that's all we're asking for. I'm not saying whether Mr. Abrego is a good guy, bad guy. I've never met him. What I'm saying is there is a Supreme Court order that is being violated right now by the executive, and they can't choose which laws they wish to follow.
A federal judge is allowing for depositions of government officials handling his case. What information do you think that process might yield?
I think, again, what we're hoping most is to find this agreement that we clearly have with El Salvador on the housing of these individuals, what those terms are, and that should show that we have the ability to revoke either that agreement or to modify that agreement to allow for them to release Mr. Abrego into U.S. custody.
You know, we heard from Senator Van Hollen, and he said, look, this is beyond just the case of one man. This is a larger issue. In his words, if you ignore the constitutional rights of one person, then that's creating a dangerous, slippery slope. How do you see it? Why is this a case that has become such a big focal point of President Trump's controversial immigration policies, in your view?
If you or I ever were to litigate a case in court or be charged with an offense, we would want to know that we have the full constitutional rights available to us. We would want to know that there's a process. If somebody's charged with the most heinous of crime, even if they did it, we don't send a lynch mob to immediately exact justice. I mean, there's a trial, there's a process. And that's all that we're asking to take place here. And that's what every American would want if they were subject to the same scrutiny, if they had been charged with any type of crime, whether they did it or didn't do it, they would want to know that they have their full rights available to them.
As you know, Benjamin, Trump officials are vowing that if Abrego Garcia, your client, ever comes back to the United States, he'll immediately be redeported. How are you planning to fight that?
Well, again, they would be well within their rights if they want to reopen his immigration case to try to take his withholding protection. My understanding is that they're also looking at potentially third countries, possibly Panama or Mexico, where they could deport individuals who had protective orders, as Mr. Abrego did from El Salvador. So we'll fight that battle when we get there. But again, they have to bring him back before they can do that. If they want to bring him back and detain him, that is well within their prerogative to do that.
Let me just follow up very quickly, because we've seen this Trump administration go after law firms, right? Some have struck a deal, some are suing. I'm just curious, from your point of view, defending him, Abrego Garcia, are you concerned at all about any sort of retribution?
If lawyers won't fight for people's rights, do you really want those lawyers to represent you if they won't fight for their own rights? I mean, look, we're not a big firm. I mean, you could go to our website and see, Mario Osorio is 32 immigration attorneys. We probably have another 100 sort of support staff. I mean, we have to partner with Big Law to do this because we are performing this pro bono. So it's not like we have unlimited resources here to fight this, but the fight is worth it because the due process is worth it. The court, the rule of law, the Constitution, all this has to stand. And so we feel an obligation to stand up here.
Benjamin Osorio, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it very much.